Hi, this is Rob Dietz.
This is Jason Bradford.
And I'm Sharon Miller. Welcome to Crazy Town, where Mad Max has a dad bod.
This episode was originally recorded on December 18th, 2019, before we knew much about the coronavirus outbreak. Hey, Jason, Asher, you guys know we took some heat last season of our podcast for our poop jokes, right? Toilet humor.
Yeah.
Well, didn't we have... I don't get the emails, so if anyone sends emails to the show, they go to the other two. But didn't we have a sponsor like I Like Diapers or something like that? Was that
I love diapers.
The problem is the three of us have the sense of humor of a typical 4-year-old. We like poop and bad words, and we're basically like Beavis and Butthead.
It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring it up is I've got a little bit of an analogy to start this episode, and it's going to involve poop. I don't know why I'm apologizing to the two of you.
Yeah.
But
I can't wait.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Christmas Day, says the Jew.
So, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit here. But,
bear down. Let's go, Rob.
You have to squeeze out some... Okay, so... Do you guys have any experience with autoimmune disorders? You know, either in your family, yourselves?
I got friends with like skin things. What psoriasis? Is that one of those?
Yeah,
could be.
I got quite a history. So when I was 18, I was diagnosed with alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune condition. Makes your hair fall out.
Wow, you have such a nice head of hair now.
It was actually a pretty traumatic experience for me. But I have a thyroid condition, and I've also had that since I was 18. I had Graves' disease. I guess I still have Graves' disease, but I don't have a thyroid anymore.
Oh,
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in considering this analogy, autoimmune diseases, there's actually 50 million Americans suffering from autoimmune disease. That's a huge percentage.
And that might be underreported, honestly. That's just known, right?
Right. And this is Crohn's disease, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, a lot of really, really common things. My own autoimmune disease, and this is where we're getting to the poop, is ulcerative colitis. So about 8 years ago, I got diagnosed with it. I started having lots of loose and urgent stools, okay? It was pretty ugly.
Let's move through this part of the show quickly.
Yes. Well,
please describe in detail.
Well, so here's the thing is that I'd even go out, say, like to go for a jog through the woods, and couldn't make it through that. You know,
you're like a bear.
Yeah. Sorry, you know what it reminds me of? Do you ever seen the Monty Python skit where they do these like Olympics, and there's a swimming race for people who don't know how to swim, so they just sink the bottom of the pool. There's this race for people who have a bad sense of direction, so they hit the gun and they're all running in different directions. Yeah. And my favorite one, and talk about 4-year-old humor, I played this for my boys when they were younger, was the marathon for people with incontinence. So literally every 10 feet, they're running into the woods to take a leak, you know?
That's that was basically me. So here's where the analogy starts. My first response to this was out-and-out denial. I don't have a problem. This is fine. This is whatever. It's going to go away. This is some just little strange thing that's happening. Oh, well. You can only do that for so long. Once you get the bloody...
Once you shit your bed.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was the blood in the stool. That's when it became kind of alarming. Like you go to take a duty... and the toilet bowl's red.
Okay, keep moving.
Anyone listening, if you're having this problem, please go see a doctor.
Go see a doctor, yes. So that's what I did. I went to see the doctor. They sent me to a gastroenterologist who ran tests and said, yes, you have ulcerative colitis. Now then, this is where the doctor starts saying, here's what you do about this, right?
Okay, hit me.
Okay, so this doctor prescribed these pills. They were amazing. They were... He told me to take 4 of them each day, and when I looked at the actual cost of them, it was $40 a pill.
Holy shit!
Yeah, so $160. Yeah, $160 a day of medication, right?
Wow.
Now, I was on insurance, and so, we could have a whole nother podcast episode about the healthcare system. So I was lucky.
That's crazy.
I was getting these basically for $10 a bottle, but like thousands of dollars worth of pills.
Yeah.
And they were great. Like they go to your large intestines, they release some magical anti-inflammatory, and you feel better. But being a relatively a patient who wants to be informed, I asked my doctor, I said, well, what's the treatment? Like, these work, and then what? He's like, well, after a while, your body's going to get used to this medication. It's going to stop working. And so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put you on this much stronger medication that comes with all these horrible side effects.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm like,
Right.
wow, really looking forward to that.
And
Well, and
Right.
each pill costs what, $10,000?
well, then was the real kicker. I said, well, then what? And he's like, well, then we'll probably remove half or all of your colon.
Whoa.
I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like a good thing necessarily to, take out part of your digestive tract. So I guess at that point I said, well, what about diet? Could I change my diet? And he's like, there's no correlation between what you eat and the health of your GI tract.
I'm not a doctor.
Oh my God.
But that sounds like bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
where did he go? What year did he graduate from medical school?
I don't know. He was about
1887.
our age.
Oh,
so
jeez.
yeah, I mean, he didn't have like a collection of bone saws on the wall, and but he definitely said that, and I challenged him on it. I said, well, could I see a nutritionist? And he kind of begrudgingly let me. Anyway, I got on this track of talking to a nutritionist and then changing my diet, changing my lifestyle, changing everything. And that's really what helped me to limit the symptoms of ulcerative colitis. And the analogy here that I'm making the turn is that when it comes to climate change and what's going to happen to our economy, there's really two sides of response. On the right side of the political spectrum, you have a response of denialism. We're going to deny that climate change is a problem, and that allows us to keep doing what we're doing. On the left side of the political spectrum, you have the delusion, which is what the doctor had, that technology will save us, that we can have this utopianism, this don't worry about it. We're just going to make a switch to a different kind of energy, and everybody will just fit into this new economy, no problem, jobs everywhere. And that's what I want to unpack. We have these two responses: denial on the right, delusion on the left.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Like the right really does see climate change. Like they see the implications. They see that if we take this seriously, this is a threat to like our way of life, our values like freedom and economic growth. And so I think it has a sense of like not wanting to face the actual consequences.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say almost like wishful thinking. Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
or a willful
ignorance, not
Yeah.
wishful, I should say. And you're seeing less and less people coming outright though and denying it's a problem.
still happens.
It still happened. Like Meatloaf went after Greta Thunberg recently. Remember? Did you guys check that
Meatloaf?
out? Meatloaf, yeah.
Like a bat out of hell. Did he go
that
after
guy.
her?
Yeah. Yeah, basically, calling her brainwashed and you think most celebrities seem to be all these like, campaigning to raise awareness, but there's a few. I always love finding celebrities that are like on the not the lefty Hollywood.
I can't get away from the image of Meatloaf in the movie Fight Club. Remember, he was one of the fighters, and he's having like other fighters crying on his chest.
Maybe they actually really hit him that hard.
right. Knocked a few brain cells out of his ears.
Yeah.
My favorite celebrity though that does this is Victoria Jackson. You know who that is?
What, the old SNL
Yes.
actress?
Yes. I mean, she's not. It was not like what was that? 15 years ago, she was still on. I can't.
No,
remember.
dude, it's
It was like
longer
the
ago than
80s,
that.
probably.
You're
She
showing your
always,
age.
So she always played a ditz, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
her character over and over.
Maybe it wasn't a character.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's a quote from her. I love this one. You can wrap Agenda 21 in many pretty words like caring about the earth, but it's actually global communism.
All right. So for those who don't know, Agenda 21 is this kind of conspiracy theory that people have that the UN is trying to take control, right? of governments around the world. There was actually a group that was in Northern California when Post Carbon Institute was there, and they called themselves the Post Sustainability Institute, which is like,
That's great.
what is that?
Right.
Like,
I have to say that I take it as a positive sign that it's quote unquote celebrities like Meatloaf and Victoria Jackson that we're worried about now.
We're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here on the denialism.
This is a good sign.
Right.
Like, it's not mainstreamers
No, it's
anymore.
not. It's not.
That's
But you see that. But it's about. This is the thing, though. You see that the fear is about this sort of government control over our lives, right? And that would just change our lifestyle, reduce our fear. That seems to be the fear.
But okay, so here we are joking about Victoria Jackson and Meatloaf, but there are really actually powerful forces that are promoting denialism, right? I mean, President Trump has done that repeatedly on climate change, called it a Chinese hoax, right? And then we've got, Scott Morrison, the prime minister in Australia. They experienced these unbelievable, devastating fires, ringing the entire country. I mean, it's like inconceivable, right? Mm-hmm. What they went through with that. And he is a coal-loving promoter of fossil fuels and a real climate denier. In fact, was sort of blaming environmentalists for setting fires and all kinds of shit. And this is a guy, he's not a fringe guy.
Yeah.
He's the head of the government.
He even tried to use the moment to say what he wanted to say about bringing us together to avoid talking about climate change. I took a quote from his. He says, "When it comes to reducing global emissions, Australia must and is doing its bit. But bushfires are a time when communities must unite, not divide." And he's talking about unite by not...
Yeah, let's not talk
about climate,
right.
Even though we're burning.
Right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, so I think you started bringing it up earlier, Jason, that the right does this because they know this is a problem to our whole socioeconomic system. And I think that's the point that Naomi Klein was making with a book she came out with a few years back called This Changes Everything. She was essentially saying, if you accept that climate change is happening, and this is the granddaddy of all market failures, then you're essentially talking about an end to capitalism, an end to the economic growth model that
capitalism as we've known it.
Yeah. I know that is so hard for people to swallow. You don't see a lot of people really attacking capitalism and growth directly. So Naomi Klein, I think, is unusual as a climate activist to do that. I mentioned, poor Greta and being attacked by Meatloaf, right? She can't handle herself. Right. He's a big dude, but she does these speeches where, like, she goes to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and it just calls them out because of money and growth, their only concerns. And I actually want to insert here, Rob, you're good at doing a clip of a speech she made in the Climate Action Summit in September of 2019. So why don't we go ahead and play that?
Okay.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable, and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is.
Can I just say how amazing it is for me to hear a 16-year-old young woman, not even a woman yet,
All right,
with the huge balls to stand up there and tell it like it is, with such moral clarity and authority. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
And I think that speech is probably even from last year as a 15-year-old. What were you doing when you were 15?
I don't even want to.
I don't want to know either.
But yeah, it's just she is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's interesting. The right attacks her personally, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you got Meatloaf. Trump is constantly attacking her. He was, I think, his ego was so bruised when she was named Time Person of the Year.
Well, you know
right?
what was the best is that he on Twitter attacked her, said, "Well, maybe you need to find some friends and go to the movies." And then Greta just trolled him back. Like on her Twitter, she changes her handle to be these insults that are thrown at her.
Yeah.
So she was like, Greta, a girl who needs to find some friends and go to the movies every so often.
Right. I mean, so she's great at that, you know. So the right attacks her personally. The left praises her. It looks to her, in a sense, as a hero, heroine, people comparing her sometimes to Joan of Arc and stuff like that. And it's interesting. I think that for her, that's actually worse.
Yeah.
I think she can handle, and it says a lot about her, these personal attacks from the right. But this adulation from the left, I think, is more upsetting for her because it's not useful.
Right.
It doesn't help.
Well,
she wants people to do something.
All right, instead of being this token, like, yay, look at you, nice going.
Yeah, and
Thanks for saying
asking
this.
for young, putting on young people to give us hope. You
Right.
know, like,
Right.
no, don't do that. Do something.
Yeah, she's really good, actually, at for both of those, for the denialists. Like when Meatloaf attacked her, her response was, "It's not about Meatloaf and it's not about me. It's about the science of climate change."
Right.
And kind of turned the conversation back. And with the left praising her, she's like, "Don't praise me. Do your damn job."
Right. And part of that, I think, gets to being clearer about what's required and stop living in fairy tales, as she was saying.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's see if we can be a little Greta-like and take a look at the left and and the delusions over there.
Oh, I saw this. This actually, it was a fairly decent New York Times article by a woman named Emma Maris, who's actually an Oregonian, and it was like titled "How to Stop Freaking Out and Deal with Climate Change." And I was kind of nodding along with it. I thought it was pretty good. She had like 5 steps, and they were decent. It was like, great, right? Do this. Focus on the systems. Don't blame yourself so much for being part of this system. And join an effective group.
Yeah, a lot of the things we've talked about in this podcast.
Yeah, know yourself and define your role. How can you contribute?
Right.
And then the last one, I kind of went, because it's know what you're fighting for, not just what you're fighting against, which is good, but it kind of puts in this sort of kind of green growth utopia sort of vision, it seemed to me, of fake meat and CO2 capture technologies humming along and so it kind of at this vision that I just felt sort of fell flat. It's not really a sacrifice. I just don't think it's realistic.
Yeah. Well, I want to be really clear that the three of us are very much in support of the transition to 100% renewable energy. We want to see a Green New Deal. We want to not be doing we've talked about in the past, sort of the circular firing squad. We're not here to attack people who are promoting 100% renewable. But what we are in favor of is a realistic vision of what that means for us and for our communities.
And that's what's irony. She says, we need to have in mind a goal of a realistically good future. And yet I didn't feel that she did that because I think there's the problem of sort of the energy blindness and not really understanding how critical energy is for what we have and how hard it's going to be to transition to having less and using less energy.
Well, and let's look at the Green New Deal in that light. I wanted to find a good definition. What is the Green New Deal? And I went to the most venerable of environmental groups, the Sierra Club. Mm-hmm. And they've got a nice website describing it. And they talk about it as this big, bold transformation of the economy to tackle the twin crises of climate change and inequality. And they say these two things are linked. We can't get past one without the other. Okay, I can agree with that. But then they go on to talk about all the things that we need, like millions of jobs, while cleaning the air and the water, while reducing emissions, building community resilience, and getting greater racial economic equity. Those are all goals that we would agree, yes, we want all that. But nowhere do they talk about how we're going to achieve that while we're taking energy out of the economy.
Right.
Well, I think part of that is that again, this comes back to sort of understanding energy and having a realistic view of the energy transition, if they believe, and many people do believe, that substitution is not an issue, right? It's just a political challenge right now. But the technology is all there. People tout how the price of solar and wind have come down. So probably in their minds, they're thinking, yeah, this is a substitution. So we're not actually going to be using less energy, right? Is I think a key part of their assumption. But we've got lots of critique about that and the challenges there. We tried at Post-Carbon Institute, we tried to take a realistic analysis of how to achieve this goal of 100% renewable energy. And we published it in a book called Our Renewable Future. And you could actually find it online at ourrenewablefuture.org.
And much of episode 1 was about energy literacy. That was not episode 1, sorry. Season 1 was about energy literacy. So episodes 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9, we were just hammering this stuff.
Right. Yeah. But put that aside for a second. Just thinking about this rub that we face here, where on the one hand, we've got the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They came out with this big report basically talking about what it would look like to get to 1.5 degrees warming, to try to keep warming to that, right? We're already above 1 degree C. And they basically called for reducing emissions 45% over, that was,
last year in 10 years
longer,
time, right?
Yeah, longer ago than that.
Yeah.
By 2030, right? So if we just say today, which emissions have gone up since, right? But let's just say starting in 2020, right? That means slashing emissions by nearly 50% in 10 years, right? So we've got the IPCC saying that, and we know that the IPCC tends to be a fairly conservative body, right? On the one hand, and that doesn't give us much to work with there, right? And then on the other hand is this idea of massively transitioning infrastructure, making all of these investments in renewable energy systems and, weatherization and public transit and all these other infrastructure changes we want to make, high density urban environments. And
that all takes energy.
Yeah, it all takes energy. Not only that, it takes fossil fuel energy.
Right. We don't know how to do it without it.
We not only do we not know how to do it, but we're going to have to make an investment of fossil fuels in order to build the renewable energy infrastructure. And so if we need to do that incredibly quickly, there's a huge carbon pulse that
emissions
comes from
go
that.
up.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like you can't drive emissions down while you're building a whole new giant infrastructure of all these alternative
unless you take
energy
completely
devices.
away from the rest of the entire economy. If you say we've got this, we're capping emissions, we're capping effectively energy use because 85+% of energy is fossil fuels right now, right? We're putting a cap on that, and that cap is going down fast, right?
Like halving.
We got to reduce it very quickly.
7% a year.
You basically have to appropriate all of that energy for this transition and take it away from the rest of the economy. Right. What does that do to the economy?
That's a slowdown in the economy. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got this conundrum, right? What I keep coming back to is think about your political leaders, your business leaders, basically anybody in a leadership position anywhere is in one of these two camps that we've talked about. They're either in the camp of denying the problem exists, or they're delusional about what an awesome time we can have replacing the energy infrastructure that we have. And what's happening is nobody is talking about if we change the economy this way, we have to have this sacrifice. And it's going to need to be a shared sacrifice to do it. And so the question I ask is, do we really have to sugarcoat this message? Do we have to pitch a utopia like we were talking, Jason, you were talking about in that article in the New York Times? And I think if we do that, let's say we get a Green New Deal, whatever, there's a new government and people have had their blood in the stool moment and recognized that climate change.
You had to bring it back to.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I can't help it. But that there really is an emergency and we got to do something about it. And they say, oh, no problem. We'll just turn it over to these new policies and everybody will have jobs and we'll have an equal and prosperous growing economy without having to make any sacrifice. And it doesn't work that way. Right. You start putting these things in place and the amount of cheap and abundant energy goes down and the economy kind of tanks with it, if nobody's ready to make any sacrifice, then that government's just going to get replaced by something far more authoritarian.
I got two things to say about that. One is, even if we didn't do that, and as we talked about in season 1,
Right.
the amount of cheap and available energy is going to go down in any case.
Yes,
right.
in
So we're
any
going to be
case.
facing this no matter what.
Right.
So we might as well be proactive and use what we have. Right. Fossil fuels are magic. Right. Let's use the magic in a realistic and positive way. Right. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is just about the whole sacrifice thing. It's a funny one, because we have to recognize there's deep inequality, not only in wealth, but in also material consumption. And so when we talk about sacrifice, I think it's true. There's a shared sacrifice here. Some of us are going to have to sacrifice more than others. Certainly, there are many people that need to sacrifice more in the United States than other people do, because there are many people that live at the margins, and are not consuming that much. And it is certainly true on the global scale as well, right? So when we say shared sacrifice, I think we have to recognize that we need an even playing field in that, and we don't have one right now, right? But at the same time, there needs to be a fairness thing there, right? So the idea that all the fat cats out there basically have to cut their consumption and the rest of us will be fine, we don't have to make any changes, is not true, if only from the standpoint of it being a shared sacrifice thing. We need to actually come together. People have to feel like it is fair, right, for this to work.
Okay, in talking about a realistic energy transition, we've been throwing around the idea of shared sacrifice. And I just want to point out that in the U.S., we have a strong history and even present of shared sacrifice in the military. We've got veterans who are putting their lives on the line and making this ultimate sacrifice to achieve a mission. Imagine if you had that kind of sacrifice for building the renewable energy infrastructure rather than whatever, protecting oil supplies in the Middle East or some of the other things that are being done.
It's not hard to imagine we've done it before. I mean, look what we did in World War II. The entire country was mobilized to sacrifice on behalf of the war effort.
Yeah. And I think it gets to your point too, Asher, about meaning. If you're doing that for a purpose, that feels actually good, like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the attraction when people talk about the Green New Deal and jobs. There's almost like this, we'll bring back this shared work of rebuilding America to be better. It just also has to be done, realistically.
Yeah, just don't expect your stock brokerage account to be growing by 25% a year while we're doing this.
Exactly. Yes, that's definitely true. We need a third kind of way then. Like you said, there's these two camps. We need a third camp, essentially.
That's right. We got to go to reality camp.
A reality camp,
That sounds so fucking boring. Reality camp? Oh.
Well, I keep worrying about the hope aspect of this. I think a lot of people are selling the delusion because it's kind of a hopeful story, right? But I don't think the hope should come from magical thinking or from Marvel superhero technologies are going to save us kind of ideas. I think we should be hopeful about getting through a shared sacrifice together and then reimagining how we live our social lives, how we connect with nature.
Yeah, and what we're promising to people, does it really have to be a new iPhone? Is that really the thing that people are going to be motivated by? I think that there are other things that we can offer.
They are addictive, you realize.
No, I know that. But I think people are hungry for meaning and connection and to not be bullshitted at.
Right.
You know?
There's a comfort in actually having an understanding, because it's jarring to have a view of the world, a model in your world, in your head of how things work, and then to have reality challenge that all the time. That is stressful.
Yeah.
When you actually sort of say, you know what, I'm a little bit more grounded in, I don't know everything for God's sakes, but I'm a little more grounded in how things function maybe and what expectations I should have reasonably. It helps you cope with the world.
So maybe it's a little like the 5 stages of grief concept. Maybe if we're trying to move people from denial through delusion to reality, we need more people in that sort of reality camp, right? How do we do that? And one idea for people, and I say this at the risk of self-promotion for Post Carbon Institute,
go for it.
But I sincerely mean this. We have a course called Think Resilience. It's 4 hours of videos that are broken down into 20 lessons, and sign up for that course. Watch it if you haven't done it already. But then the big thing would be, we need more people in this camp with us.
Yeah.
So bring a group of people together. Pick neighbors, friends, colleagues, and don't just go for the safe bet. Just a little aside, we did this conversation, a webinar conversation at Post Carbon Institute back in 2019, talking about how to talk about climate change with people. Mm-hmm. And one of the people we had on is a woman named Karen Kirk, and she talked about something that she entitled The Spectrum of Persuadability. She really said, don't focus on the deniers, yeah? Focus on people that are open to being moved, and then think about what moves those people. Find commonality with them. So when you think about people to engage, to bring into the reality camp, don't go for the deniers. Go for the people in your life that you know are deeply concerned about the climate crisis.
But they may be energy blind.
They may be energy blind. So also with the Think Resilience course, we have a package for people to do this as a group together. The group can sign up together, watch a course. We've got some lesson plans, discussion topics to kind of foster conversation. So you watch a certain number of the videos every week and you get together and talk about it.
And that course, what I think it really does is gives you the understanding that you need to engage in the climate issue, the economic issue, the whole overshoot issue with a scientific underpinning, with an understanding of what's going on. And that, to me, that helps you with what needs to be done.
Excellent. And you've been helped by your new diet and lifestyle. That helped you? You changed? You're doing fine?
It's, every once in a while we might have some flare-ups, but
okay.
The same's going to happen in the economy when we go through energy descent.
Okay, we'll better wrap this up. You probably got to run to the loo. So.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Hey, to get more information or to stay updated whenever we put out a new episode, go to postcarbon.org/crazytown and make sure you sign up for our email list. Yeah, so what do you get if you sign up this week?
Well, you get a autographed portrait of Meatloaf, for one thing.
You could use that to wipe your ass.
Oh, he's a handsome devil.
I'm going to need, a couple thousand of those.
Sure.
You could send us insults on Twitter, and we'll change our Twitter handles accordingly.
All right.
That sounds good.
You're an idiot, Asher. So then you're going to
That's
say,
actually already
Asher,
my...
I'm an idiot.
That's already my Twitter handle. Come up with some more creative, people.